the videos that I keep trying to do are not coming up. Now, I'm gonna be talking about my favorite game of all time. I talked about this at length, but I might as well just say this right now. You know what? I'm just gonna tell you flat out what my favorite game of all time is. It's Killer 7. And the reason I want to do this, I want to say this immediately rather than, because I think before, each time I'm doing this, like each time I did this, I think I tried to do it 4 times. Um, I usually started with uh, what my previous favorite game. No, 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 no. It's not my favorite game of all time, but my favorite game so far. That's what I meant to say. Is that I tried to is that I tried to whatchamacallit, explain what exactly my favorite game prior to that was. That way I can explain. Oh, that way I can explain. Oh, this is why it was replaced, or oh, this is why you know. Uh, whatchamacallit. And that's why it kind of changed. But I'll just say it kind of just an abridged version of it. I was trying to bring up an abridged version of it. Um, so essentially, what I was trying to say, my previous game prior to that was uh, Gun, and the thing is, I played Gun when I was an adolescent, basically. I was about like 12 years old, and I enjoyed it. And I was exposed to the game at a very early age, and when I got a little bit older and I played and I was able to get it on PS2, I still loved the game. But Killer 7 did things that other games did not do. And that was essentially um whatchamacallit. It made me think. Um it makes you think in terms of gameplay and story. And I say that as as respectively as I could, because from even the outset of the game, in the game, I might as well just say this. I'm gonna do this, try to and do it in as much of an order as I possibly can. So in the beginning of the game, you are exposed to the Killer 7, and uh, and kind of like their motives and their reasons, and very quickly you realize who the you think is a villain, but he's not. But by the end of the game, or I should just say, as the game continues on, you start to realize that um, your ideas, or the ideas that this person's trying to give you, is like, oh, I'm working for the government, and your character's like, what was it trying to say? Oh yeah, so your antagonist, whose name's Kunlan or Kunlan, however you want to say it, he he represents one side of the law, or not one side of the law, but he represents one side of the coin. And what's his face? Harmon Smith, who's the central character of the Killer Seven. He's basically the reason these Killer Seven people are able to kind of, walks amongst the world, because they're his different personalities. And um, what should I say? What was I getting at this? Oh, yeah. So, um, huh. So the Killer Seven kind of denounce the guy. They just kind of just say like, okay, we'll work for you because they're assassins. They work for money, you know, and even though they work for money, like they could have worked as easily for Kunlun if they wanted to. But the thing is, it's because the government was paying them more money. So these people are just essentially doing it out of money, or they're doing it out of, whatever reason, for revenge, or recognition, or something like that. So, but in the meantime, if you were to ask any of them, because I think this happens a few times, especially in the second level, where Umi Oyameda, or however you want to say it, is talking to like Garcia, and he's like, "Oh, what is your stance on this?" And Garcia's like, "Well, my stance is this." And then Olameda, or however we say his name, was just looking at him, and he said, um, "Well, that's not really an answer." And he's like, "Well, I don't have all the facts." And Olameda is like, "Oh, all you need to know is this." And it's really one of those things that really answers out to even today, because some people just say and look, and they just basically say, "Oh, yeah, my opinion's right, yours is wrong." And it's like, really, is it? Is it now? So, um, it really just speak volumes, uh, to the characters. Yeah. So, um, yeah, you keep that. So essentially, you have your own ideals, and then you realize that each of those people have their own ideals as well. They're just kind of like, yeah, these are my ideas, and these are my ideas, and these are my ideas. But essentially, they all have pretty much the same idea, um, which is cool. Which is cool. I like that. And what was I trying to say? Yeah. So yeah. So essentially, I haven't played a game prior to Killer Seven before. It was really one of those games that got me just thinking. from the beginning. Sorry, that scene was a little funny. From the beginning, it got me thinking. Wow, is you know, like wow, I can't believe that this game is able to do that and this and that. So let's get into the gameplay aspect. So when you're playing the game, right? And you're playing as each of the characters. Each of the characters, each of the characters have their own different. How do I say this? Their own different play styles. So some people are faster, some people are slower, and the thing is that speaks volumes for their character because it's kind of character that they kind of want to portray. And I was thinking like when you watch like an assassin or like a serial or not a serial killer but like a killer, I should just say an assassin in a movie, they're able to like shoot at like these precise shots and everything. That's what you basically get into Killer 7. And and the one thing I like about it too is that most games like they kind of get cinematic nowadays, but Killer 7 is kind of one of those games where it's 90% gameplay and like 10% cutscenes. And that's very rare. That's very rare. You never really get that out of any games. Very very rare. And I'll say right now that how do I say this? Yeah. So yeah, I'll say right now that in the back of the box or the back of the game box, the title or the let's say the subtitle there says "Step into the mind of an assassin." Yeah. So what the game is trying to tell you is that you're not just going to be able to just get into their mind mentally, but you're also going to get into their body and the way they move and they function. But there are a few downsides. Although this is my favorite game, there are a few downsides. No game is 100% perfect, and some downsides of this game is that some of the only like maybe three of the characters in the game, other than Harmon Smith, so that would be four characters, are actually fleshed out. The other ones are kind of the only way they're fleshed out is through carrier pigeons, so they're not really fleshed out properly, I should say. And that's if you get all the carrier pigeons, because sometimes you'll miss them, and then oh, this is another cool thing that you have certain characters that are helping you, and there are basically what is it called on? There are basically two sides, right? And there's Kunlun, and then there's Harmon Smith, and you have either you have essentially so essentially yeah you have and then you have the Killer Seven, and the reason that this game is called Killer Seven and not called like America versus this or whatnot, it's because at the basis of the game, you're the only seven people in the game that actually has pretty much a mind of their own. Like everyone else is either on one side or the other, or there's sometimes people that are lenient towards one side or the other. And I think the whole game comes down to understanding people, like especially the All Almeida one, and the next level. When the Killer Seven go about to kill these people, it's not full-heartedly said that oh yeah they're all gonna understand, but essentially that's what happens. They're all gonna understand. Oh, sorry, Yanni. Yeah, they're basically all going to understand what that person's motives were. And that's very interesting because that speaks that basically speaks volumes on the characters. Yeah, so yeah, that basically speaks, yeah, like volumes for the characters. And because like you're expecting them to basically um, because they're pretty much the only group. Yeah, they're pretty much the only group that actually, how do I say this? They're the only group that actually, is willing to understand other people. Everyone's always like, no, my side's right. No, my side's right. No, your side's, like this side's mostly right. They're not right about everything, but they're mostly right. And I'm like, that's not, that's, is that really how you want, like, people to perceive things? But this is the really cool thing. This is the really cool thing. Like, when it comes down to it, that's kind of like how things are today. Like everyone's always like, "No, my side's right. No, my side's right. No, your side's wrong." Um, it was just basically ingenious. It was basically ingenious. I'm so happy that Suda 51 and Grasshopper created a story that kind of symbolizes, um, the way that the game should be perceived, because it's not just the story, it's the way that you're controlling the story, and it's the way that the story is going about. So this is another cool fact. If you look back at Killer 7 too, and if you look at it, you're gonna say like, well, it didn't get a lot of good reviews, and I'm gonna say it's because it kind of got the treatment that, you know was kind of like, oh, it's a really good game, oh, it's an okay game, or oh, it's, subpar. But the thing is, if you step into their mind, right? Not just like, oh, they're an assassin, oh, this and that. Yeah, it's like basically, oh, this and that. No, it's more deeper than that. They actually understand people. Like they were people once, and because of the things they went into the past, like when it explains that in carrier pigeon form, like it explains how everything happened in the past, towards, the seven playable characters. And it's really, really, how do I say this? It really, really spoke volumes to me. It didn't. No, at no point in this game did I ever tear up. There were some times that I, would smirk because they had some jokes, but it was mainly one of those games that just made me think a lot. When I finished that game, I immediately started again, and I said, "No, no, 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 no! I have to think about this game." And you know what? I'm so glad that I did. Yeah, so I know that this is going on like way too long, and I'm sorry I'm not really organized, but I'm trying to do this as best I possibly can. The story is more than just uh oh, go here and this is how the story ends. No, it really brings up the ideas that like oh, and especially when it comes towards the end of the game and things go full circle, like all the bosses you faced, all of the people that you've come across, were they right? In some cases they're wrong. They're either wrong, they were either right, or they were, they thought wholeheartedly and there is no right answer, or there is no perfectly wrong answer. And that is just amazing. Like at the end of the game, like things wrap up and you're just like, what? Like I can't believe what's going on. And I think I think, I think uh, one of my favorite parts about the ending, without spoiling it, was like there was a line that was similarly said to, oh, like, uh, there's gonna be a time and a place where like I think it was between the two factions. It was like, oh, there's gonna be a time and there's gonna be a place where things are gonna happen, and how do I say this? And it doesn't matter what happens out anymore, as long as let's say you join us, or whatever, and it's like join us as like a group, and that was just such an interesting idea. Like, yeah, like, oh my goodness, I was not. Yeah, so that was just it was amazing because um I know you have to play the game for me to fully understand it, but once you watch that scene and you're just like, "Oh my goodness." And then the aftermath, it's like you don't know, or you're not willing to just understand, or you're not willing to just um you're just like, "I want an answer. I came all this way. I want an answer." And the answer that they give them is kind of like, "Well, what if this happened?" Or like, "Oh, what if this happened?" Oh, not what if this happened, but mainly like, oh, it doesn't matter anymore because we're kind of on the same page, or oh, it doesn't matter anymore because I'm eventually gonna turn against this guy, but don't tell him, or vice versa. Um, it was one of those interesting things, and you're just like, oh my gosh, they're both sides are wrong, and then when you want to be on the side of the Killer Seven, you can. I don't want to spoil the ending, but let's basically say that you can't because things happen and you're just totally just sitting there and you're just understand you're saying like now there's nobody that understands both sides. There's nobody that just at least understands both sides. Yeah, so basically what I'm trying to say is pick up the game and play it. But the thing is, it's not for everyone. I think there is some truth to some of the reviews that I read. The gameplay is just too, interesting, kind of wonky and stuff like that. And if you're not really much of a gamer, but I mean, if you want to try it out, sure. Um, but I don't know. Like I'm just telling you right now, you're gonna get into some kind of a bit of a frustration, and that's not good. Let's be honest. That's not really good at all. So without further ado, uh, I might as well say this before I end with my final thoughts. I'm not much of a stringer. I like that line. I'm sorry. So did I just say I'm not much of a streamer? No, I meant to say that I am really a streamer, and that I, you, the only way for me, the only way for really for me to how do I say this? Um, so it's really difficult for me to make a video that I can, edit and concretely just explain all of the things that um, all these things are gonna have to go into like a stream, which is really interesting because I don't mean for it to go into a stream, but at least it'll be fast. At least it will be fast. Hopefully, it's no longer than like an hour or so. Um, for my final thoughts of the game, I'm not gonna go really more so into I guess the critical stuff of the game. You can ask me that in the comments, like, oh, what is your idea of this and that? Like I did explain some, but your ideas of this and that, and I can answer them. As opposed to like why is it my favorite game? And it's kind of like the gameplay. This is the best way I can say it. You read in a book and you come up with an idea. This is also like the ultimately for me to tie it up. You're reading a book and you're coming up with an imagination of how the character moves, how the character shoots his gun. Like if you've ever read a book and you have this imagination, if you have this image in your head of how they shoot and how they move and maneuver, and then ultimately, how do I say this? And ultimately, you find out. Um, wait, that's not right. Yeah, and then ultimately, when you watch the like movie, right? The movie version of that. Um, and an actor is given their lines, they have to interpret how it is going to be on a piece of paper, or in like the screenplay is what I'm trying to say. And um, um, what I'm basically what I'm trying to say basically is that there this is like the first game in which I was exposed to both, enjoying, how do I say this? I was able to imagine like, oh yeah, an assassin's able to shoot like this and this and that. The gameplay meshes well with what you're supposed to be. Like your aiming is perfect all of the time. It's not like you're veering off like in Call of Duty, like your bullets, some of your bullets go here or your recoils going all over the place. No, you shoot like you're one of those people out of the movies, and that's basically a commentary on kind of, or like a parody, I guess, maybe, of why they shoot so well. Dang, this is really all over the place. But what I'm basically trying to say, I had to pause the game for this, is that no other game had me thinking in terms of the gameplay and how it goes with the story. Getting into their mind, into the assassin's mind, and playing like them, and going about being, knowing their essence. Like, oh, I'm an assassin. I'm only getting paid for money. But it's more than that. It's like, oh, I'm an assassin. I'm an assassin. I'm getting paid for money from the highest person. Excuse me, from the highest person. But it doesn't mean I have to like their views, because I got to make a living somehow, or for whatever reason. And no other game did that well. And and then when you go against your enemies, you're like, oh yeah, I understand why you did it, why you did what you did, and why you got away with it. And I will say this, like some of the people do get killed. Like this Killer 7 do kill them, and some of them don't. And I'm sorry, there's a lot of ands, buts, likes, and similarly too. Um, I explained this so well, and now I forgot it. But let's just say you're the back of the box does not lie. When you step into that mind, you're stepping into that mind. You're playing as these 7 personalities, part of Harmon Smith, who's a central character, which is very interesting because there is no. If maybe if the developers had more time, like Grasshopper and Suda51, if they had a little bit more time, they probably would have came out with a side a game. How do I say this? What if the Killer 7 joined, Kunlun's side, or Kunlun, however you want to say it, Kunlun's side, and it would have been interesting, of course, but because of the limitations of the hardware, I'm assuming because it was on the GameCube, and they had to be on those little proprietary small discs, they didn't have much of room because it was on 2 discs. I don't know if they were able to put it on 3 discs, because on you have to admit, like, how do I say this? That was back when they had instruction manuals, and they had to fit it on certain boxes, the GameCube boxes. So only 2 discs were able to fit in there, and I feel like a lot of it was cut out. Like as I said, like four of the 7 killers were kind of like only explained through carrier pigeons, and that's not really good. But the one genius thing is, like, the ending of the game. Everyone, I think I'll just say this: the ending of the game, people think is, oh, it's just like this. And I was like, no, 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 no. Or no, oh, maybe it's going back to this. No, 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 no. It's a commentary. Well, what? Well, no, no, no. If they have the evidence, but the thing is, like, most of the people just say it. They're just like, oh, it's this, with no evidence. Then that's why I say, no, 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 no. Where's your evidence? You can't just say this is that and that's law. No, you have to bring evidence. And there were some people that did bring evidence, but it didn't. It was kind of more of like, oh, it's a linear progression, and bam, it's just da da da. I'm like, no, no. Well, maybe you have a little bit of evidence, but I don't believe it that's what the developers were trying to say. I think really what it was trying to say was that no person was right, no matter what side you picked. And the same thing with Killer 7, the 7 characters. I don't think it really would matter what side they picked. It's just the outcome would be basically the same. I think that's what it was basically about. No matter, and if they were to, the Killer 7, if they were if they stopped being assassins and maybe formulated a group, then things might have ended differently. But the thing is, when it comes down to it, these people, all they cared about was being an assassin. And uh, and that was a commentary on basically, oh, if you get the right weapons, you can beat the other side. And that's what Kunlun was trying to do. Kunlun was either trying to eliminate the Killer 7, or he was trying to convert them. And that's genius because I think the Killer 7 was the embodiment of what if they had uh, these weapons of mass destruction, basically. And that's the 7 playable characters you choose as. But that's just me. And I could be wrong. I could be right. You can totally tell me in the comments below if you think that I'm right, or if you're oh, think about it in a more, how do I say this? Think about it. You're thinking about it too much. You're thinking about it at the wrong angle. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. But ultimately, guys, that's been a video. That's been a stream. Very short one. It was just to get my point across what my favorite game is. I'm glad that I was able to exercise why. I was able to ramble a little bit towards the end here. Um, but the last thing, I know I said that before, but this is carrying, or like I should say, shooting it home. If you want a game that makes you think, um, and it's one of those games that has an open-ended kind of ending, and I guess it really does depend on the person that you talk to. I do have a friend, and I talk to him. He's he played through it once, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. But it does not necessarily mean that. How do I say this? Yeah, it does not necessarily mean that the game is any bad or any good. Anyone who has an idea, anyone can pick up and play the game. I would say like people that don't really play games don't pick up the game. But if you want a challenge or if you want a game that, I like the way this game sounds or I like the way that you sold it to me, then by all means buy the game. It's a really older game. I don't know if it's worth a lot of money. I should really see if it's worth a lot of money, but let's just say that let's just say that I really did enjoy Killer 7. I wasn't I was a gamer obviously at that time. I loved playing video games, but how do I say this? But initially, this is why I wanted to talk about gun first and then, kind of segue into this, but I just want to talk about my favorite game. But let's just say I was so more into games that were more to the point kind of thing, like Gun, Star Wars Battlefront, um, the Final Fantasy series, and kind of stuff like that. And it kind of took me a while for me to get into Persona and especially Killer 7 and Geist, uh, because it sometimes takes a while to it sometimes takes a while for you to get into it. Yeah, sometimes it takes a while for you to get into how do I say this, Killer 7, because um, it's not one of those games where it's it's one of those games that make you think. So you're going to be in it for the long run. If you don't care for it, um, um, or if you want to disregard this video, it's totally cool. Is what I'm trying to say. I don't. But the thing is, don't come into the conversation as like, oh, you're wrong, or stuff like that, because. But if you have if you have evidence, then I could definitely be wrong. But that's something I would really have to admit. Oh yeah, I was wrong. You're right. You have all this evidence. So but yeah, this has been rambling. This is too much rambling and stuff like that. I enjoy Killer 7. I'm sure that most gamers would if they give it a chance. Is what I'm trying to say. After the prologue, you'll definitely enjoy the game. You'll definitely get to love the characters. That's not a guarantee, but it was something that even myself, who's more of a person that likes to directly get into games. I don't like pausing. I don't like a lot of cutscenes. I mean, I don't mind cutscenes. I really don't mind cutscenes. Be honest. I don't mind cutscenes at all, but they kind of take me sometimes out of the immersion. The old Final Fantasy games. That's why I like the older Final Fantasy games. There's not really much cutscenes. Um, as opposed to the new ones that have a crapload of cutscenes, because I want to play the game. I don't want to like watch a movie like version of the game. Not saying that's bad. So without further ado, guys, if you did enjoy the video, be sure to give it a like. And if you didn't, then you don't have to. Be sure to leave something in the comments um, section, and let me know your ideas, or tell me what your favorite game is. Because quite honestly, like, because quite honestly, I'm very how do I say this? So and the one thing too is that even if you don't leave a like and you say something in the comments saying, "Oh, I enjoyed your video, but I didn't necessarily like it," and I was like, "That's good enough for me," because at the end of the day, I don't really care about. It's not that I don't care. If you subscribe, that's cool. I appreciate it, but my main premise is to make you guys uh, feel entertained. This video kind of might have been a little bit of rambling, but I hope that you did enjoy the content. end the video. Thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you on the next stream.